share screen. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
All right, okay. So here, this is just a simple veneer. And I thought, okay, you know, instead of grabbing a tooth from a tooth library, let's see if we can copy the tooth on the other side. So it is in the sort of in the center of Blender. So this is very important because when we're mirror imaging, we need to have it more or less in the center that it can mirror image. Very important, otherwise it's not going to do the mirror imaging correctly. Okay, so let's go to the wax up module and always make sure your modules are up to date. It just takes a few seconds. I was in this the situation yesterday where I tried to help somebody and he hadn't updated his module for I don't know how long. So when I took it over to my computer to try and see what's going on, my coding didn't work. So just always click on update, please. Okay. So here we're going to go and the wax up. I'm going to, there's this little tool here, patient's teeth, where it says mask. So I'm going to click on the mask and I'm going to do just paint on this. I see the mesh mixer guys that love this. They always paint the orange all over the teeth. Well, you know, in Blender we also have that, but it's just in gray, you know. So basically we're selecting the vertices by painting them like that. I want to be careful how I do paint it. So I'm just giving a bit of effort. If you don't see the plus and minus, go to the view here and there's a tool settings there. And then this bar comes up and we've got the minus and plus, so you can work with plus and minus. Okay, so let's go back to plus. Just take this and just give it a quick paint like that. Okay, I think that should be okay like that. Yeah. Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate the surface. So click on duplicate surface. And then what we're going to do is we're going to mirror image this. So this now is only like a skin. Click on mirror sections and it puts it into that side. Now we can see it's not exactly 100% mirror image, but it's quite close. So here I'll just rotate it a bit and use a G key and so on. Look at it from the front. So we've got quite a good match already. But now we need to make a tooth, like a tooth library out of it. That's very important. Now, how do we do that? That's easy. We just go up, view it from the top. Okay. I'll just move this out a little bit more, something like that. And then what we're going to do is go to the Pontics menu here, and we're going to then close the tooth mesh, and then we're going to change it to bullet shape. And then we've got like almost a tooth library here. But I'm going to go Control I and hide. You'll see that it's not quite what I want it to be. So I'm going to toggle the apex and go GZ just to move it up a bit and then exit. And then we're going to just smooth that. Now, that's quite important because we want the mesh geometry to be good enough. If we, otherwise we're going to have inverted normals and stuff, especially where it's extruded on the contact areas. Yeah, that's very important. We can even remesh this tooth, but I'm going to leave that because I want the surface texture of this tooth. Then I'm going to exit, and we're going to, then we've got everything that we need. I'm going to go to the crown module. This is my working model, and this is my tooth. And this is where it's going to get remeshed. So if I look at it, we've got a good mesh structure. So we've got the virtual identical on from the other side, which is absolutely awesome, I think. All right, so the next thing I want to do is, okay, let's hide this. And sometimes we section scans because we want the tooth to join nicely, and we want to be able to see around this tooth. Now, here's a bit of a trick. Now, in our modules, we say, okay, we look at it from the top and we cut through. Sometimes it's not 100% possible because we can see the margin over here. over here, comes down like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift right click to place my cursor, and then I'm going to cut it from this angle. So create vertex, G. So notice that I've actually placed it on a point which is close to me, because this tool is offset from the model. So we don't want to place it over here because it's not going to cut through. That's another very important thing to remember. So here what I'm going to do is do this. Yep. And then we're going to make a cutting tool. And we're going to make this cutting tool quite small, 0.05, maybe 50 microns. It's like a disc. And we're going to then section this. Okay, so that should cut through nicely. Now, we do need to check the face orientation. It's very important here. If sometimes, especially with open meshes, they can flip around. So, but in this case, we good. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one over here. Shift right click, G to grab, E to extrude, like that, all the way. Make a cutting tool. Yeah, okay, so let's make that also 50 microns. And oh, what have I done now? I'll just go back. Section. I've done something wrong. Okay, make cutting tool. I'll just make that 0.1. Maybe it was too thin. Ah, funny. Okay, this is probably due to the fact that I didn't select this one. I may have selected that one over there. Let's just do this again quickly. So create that, G, extrude, and come through there like that. So that should do it, I think. Make cutting tool. Okay, I'll just cut it like that. Perfect. Okay. So this is not always necessary, but sometimes it can be an added advantage. Now, make sure they are in the working module. These are called working model. Shift right click to place the cursor and start drawing your margin. Okay, so this is quite a tricky margin. I'll just fly through there. Now, please don't go over the line. You've got to stay within the mesh structure. Okay, otherwise it's not going to cut. So I think it's meant to overlay a little bit. So I'm going quite close, but I'm not going to go into the outside of this. Something like that. Just check my work that it's more or less where I want it to be. All right, so let's cut the surface. Okay, that's perfect. I'm going to select my surface and we're going to then survey it as we know. Now, please don't make a block out model like this because it makes no sense. If we toggle in X-ray mode, we can see all of this is undercut. And I've seen a few people do this. You can imagine this is going to block out everything you see from what we're looking at the moment, and it's extruding it through there. So move it out so that you can actually see the margins. Here we can see there's a bit of undercuts over here. So it is very important to get a good compromise. Like here, for example, as I move it, you can see how it lights up. So we want to get a good, something like that. Okay, I'm happy with that. And then we're going to block this out. Now, while we're waiting here, what I've done is I've set my Blender to autosave every 1 minute, and I've done the steps. You can set your steps. So go to here, edit, preference. You go system and then undo steps. I've set it to quite large amount because usually I think it's about 36 by default. And then you go to save and then here you can save a timer in minutes. I've put it to 1 minute because, you know, in case something happens, Blender can sometimes crash. It doesn't happen often with me, but then at least we've got a timer there, so it saves every minute. And to get back to that, you go File, Recover, Autosave, and then you're going to look for your last file, and it should be there. All right, so we've got this. I'm going to put a margin on there. So let's put a 0.1 like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to select that and create an auto space and zone. And that's more or less the halfway mark, because if you wanted to make a coping, like a thin coping, and then put porcelain on top of that, you can quite easily make a coping from here. All right, we don't have an antagonist, so we'll go straight to generating crowns. Okay, it is hidden. I'm going to unhide my restoration, select it, yeah, and then we're going to go edit mesh. And here I want to just make sure that I'm close to the margin, and I've got a good emergence profile. So here we can see I don't have a good emergence profile. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just stick it there. Also, I'm going to move that out a little bit like that. Something like this. Yeah. And then what we're going to do is we're going to generate this. So here. So it is also good at this stage to save it as well, so that you know, you've got it all nice and saved. Okay, generate upper crown. Okay, so that's done it nicely. We've changed the algorithm because you can see that it is so smooth now that we don't even have to smooth it with a sculpting brush. So you can see how beautiful this mesh is. I don't think we can get it any better than this. And I reckon this would compete with the big players quite easily. Okay, so this is my veneer. It's finished. Control I and hide just to have a look at it. I've got my margin here, and my die spacer has been cut out over here. So this is basically what the inside of it looks like. And I'm quite happy with this result. So are there any questions related to this? Would be quite good to just take a quick pause. Wolfgang, have you anything you can think of?
No, I think you covered that very nicely with the cutting of the dies from an actual angle, actually segmenting that. I quite like that. It's a really good technique, because if you just view it from the top, you can't get that zigzag contact going downwards. So that's very clever, Michael.
Here you can see how nicely the margin is adapted now. There's a lot of work that's gone into the crown and bridge module lately, so please just click on update to get all of the codes. One thing that I'd like to just touch on is that you may have heard about this locator. Now, this is why we've made quite a few changes. If you have a look here and you click on locator, now just to touch on the subject, what is this locator? This locator extrudes while we are doing the surveying. So as you know, beforehand I surveyed it. It picks a vertice in more or less the middle of the mesh, and it will then extrude it towards my eyes. And this locator runs into the crown. So if I have a look into it, it runs into the crown, and then it intersects with everything else. So if I expose the green zone or the abutments here, so this one is very important, because while we selecting our crown from the tooth library, for example, it needs to know what else it needs to select, because it's going to select the the die spacer, it's going to select the blocking out model underneath. So there's like 3 or 4 models that it selects. So this is a very important thing. And if you're doing like an inlay with a thin isthmus, the locator may not be in the correct place. We can't really predict. Usually it is, but if it isn't and it doesn't generate, then you go back a step. I've put an error code in there now. So if it doesn't cut, it actually tells you to go back, Control Z, and place the locator in a different position. Now, how do you do that? All you need to do is go into edit mode, select Control L, and then you would then take this and put it where the thin isthmus is between the of an inlay or something, an MOD, for example. And then it will then select everything that it needs to select. Okay, let's go to the next case. Okay, open. Okay, here, this is the post that I was doing. Very interesting, and there's a lot of things that we can pick up from this thing. So first of all, I look at it from the front view. It's upside down. The user started with it being upside down, and this is not the way we start anything in Blender. All right, so how do we get this to the center? Easy, we do it exactly like we always do. So this is the upper, enter, target. This is the opposing. We're going to link and flip it over. Now, where do we put these points? Okay, I'm going to select and I'm going to click P, put one there, Shift D, Shift D, Shift D. So I'm sort of getting a bit of a, you know, a quad square or a rectangle. So there's not much to go on because it's such a small model, right? Then we're going to click on a line. And now you've seen it's not quite where I want it. So I know the red axis is the x-axis. So I can see it needs to be flipped. Okay, so let's do this. Flip on the x-axis 2 times. And now I want it to be in the front. So this is the z-axis. So we're going to flip it. So 1, 2, 3. And now we've got exactly, because we're looking at it in the front. This is where I want this model to be perfect. Now, in this instance, I want to put this into the vertex split base because it's such a small model, and it would be good to have a die because then we can check it as well. Okay, so I'm taking a chance here with this model, and I'm going to extrude it straight into a model and see whether it actually does it. Okay, the edges are not very good, but we'll just give this a go. Okay, so important when you're being daring like this, just go into the face orientation to make sure there's no red spots. Okay, if you find, just say for example, you find a red spot. Now we're lucky. Okay, there's no red spot. But before when I practiced this thing, there was a red spot over here. Okay, now these are the inverted normals, and we do not want inverted normals. Now, how do you quickly get rid of an inverted normal when this happens? All you need to do is you go to the sculpt object, and then you brush that red piece with your sculpt, and then it will disappear. So just keep that in mind. You can do a lot of fixing with the sculpt
Michael,
sculpting
you
tool.
can also cut it out, can't you?
Yes, you can cut it out as well. I've often done that where I've just lasso tooled and just cut it out.
Yeah.
Good point. So if there's a big area, just say the whole of the whole thing here is red. Just go from above, lasso tool, and cut it out.
Or alternatively, go back and trim a nice border with the arch cutting tool.
Yeah. Now, there's a lot of tips and tricks here that I'm explaining. Now, this one has a post and it leans out like that. We're going to have to make we're going to have to make a model with, and it's just going to brush past this post. It may not even be thick enough. Also, I want to arch cut this one because there's a lot of rat's edges here, and we want to have a nice model. So the way I do that, I can see here we've got these Mount Everest here, and all of these hills and valleys and stuff. Before you do arch cutting, just have a look at your surface, how your surface topography is. We can easily rectify that. So go Sculpt tool, and we're going to just brush this down like it, because I'm going to come there with my arch cutting tool, okay? So I'll just give it a quick like this, and I'm going to come across here. Very easy to do, and it makes things so much better, okay? So that's all I have to do. We're going to exit, shift right click, and grab your arch cut here like that. E to extrude. Now we've got that post underneath there. So we need here, we've got a whole lot of stuff happening here. So ideally we could have sculpted that down as well. But now when I come to the other side, I want to try and get like a 45 degrees, because when this, not 45, just a slight angle, because when we're extruding this down, we do not want this to be like this, okay? It's very, very important, because this is going to be a problem. These are going to be intersecting vertices. Here again, I'm coming down at an angle like that, okay? And then we're going to fuse this side. We're going to trim it, select what we want to keep, clean that, and then we're going to make our model. So click on upper, even, okay, it's upside down, but we know that this is our upper model. Now, if I go into transparent mode, I can see it's quite close here, okay? Maybe, well, it's okay, okay? But now, what happens if it's even closer? Now, what you're going to do is you're going to go to scale. We're going to go to scale this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go S and scale it. And we can grab it a little bit to the side to make sure that there's enough material over here. Okay, and then we're going to come out of there. And I'm quite happy with this like that. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to put this into the vertex split system, okay? Now, we're going to take both of these, and we're going to go and call this vertex split system up. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take these two and put them into the collection. That will join them up, okay? So you'll see it's called vertex model. Then we're going to select a cutter. So one there and one up top there. Now this cutter, we can move up and down, and we're going to, don't worry about this section. I'm more concerned about the front section now, because it's done in two stages. The front section going in the Z direction, and then we're going to put the models. Now, remember, we've got like the actual post here. So what I'm going to do is we're going to look at it from the top view, and I'm going to take this G, and I want to place it over the cavity of it, R, like this. So I'm being very careful to place it over that cavity. And this is the X-ray and non-X-ray. I'm just going to go into transparent mode to see where my post is. Yep, that's fine. And the next thing is we're going to trim that off, and the cutting tool is going to trim all of this excess away, okay? We're going to now click on finish, okay, finish. And that will fuse them together. Okay, perfect. That's really looking nice. Now, of course, we don't want to print so much. And Wolfgang, can you just explain quickly with the hollowing? Because I'm going to engage in this hollowing now.
Yeah, so I found that, well, now we've got three options. We can either make a solid dies, or we can hollow those. And I used the gyroid very successfully, because you still get the flow out of the resin, and cleaning is not a big issue there if you've got a cleaning bath. So the other one is just a plain hollow, but that might lack a bit of structural support, especially when you're trying to snap it off the printing plate. So you want to have it a little bit more stable, but I've successfully used both.
Good.
So
So
if you're going to ditch, you would ditch the margin first and then hollow. Otherwise, you might end up with ditching right into your hollow. So always ditch first.
that's right. But in this case, I'm not going to ditch it. I'm going to make my crown without ditching it.
Yeah.
So in that case, we can go with a hollow model. But before we engage in that, I just want to demonstrate how this tool works. Now, Wolfgang, can you just also explain how this edge works?
Yeah. So our we the idea here is to use the burn layer that is created by the longer printing of the first couple of layers as a clipping mechanism. But to enhance that clipping mechanism, we've added an extra bit of a step in there. So that angle is 0.8 millimeters. So you've got, say, 10 or whatever layers. If you're printing 80 microns there, that would take it up to that angle. But all of our printing was done with calibration systems and all that. So if you find the die is fitting just too tight or very difficult to get out of the plastic injection mold, now we've got the ability to, the user can set the step themselves. So we can go passive fit. So the dies will just slide into the base plate, or you can find your own settings so that it's not too difficult to push out.
Awesome. All right, so let us change that. I mean, if it's too tight, let us change it. So we're going to select that and click less retention. So that's taken this in by 0.2 millimeters already by the first click. Next click, I'll just zoom in a bit more, less reduction. You can see how it moves, okay? So that's how it moves. If you don't want any retention, you're going to click no retention, okay? Now we can't add retention. We can only take back. Adding would be like a really, really complex task.
But
Okay?
you can undo it, and that will bring it back.
Yeah, so here what I'm doing is I've undid it, okay? So just say the lower, we don't want any retention, or the upper, you can select either one. It doesn't matter which one you select, it will work on both.
Having
So
said
here
that, you
again,
still have that friction fit
no,
of those parallel sides of the serrations.
yeah. Now we've marked it blue so that we know that you guys have changed the retention. So when you come and say, oh, this thing, blah, 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 we can actually see, okay, you've changed the retention. And it gives you a good indication that you have changed your retention. Now, the next thing is we're going to hollow this. So we can click both at once, or we can click one and the other, depending whatever you want to do. Also, bear in mind that if you have these set at a standard height in your articulator, just use the standard height, because then you can put any patient case in your vertex split in the articulator, and every patient case is going to fit. So that's another thing to think about. Okay, here we're going to take both of these and we're going to click hollow. Okay, so let's click on that and we'll just wait for it to do a bit of thinking. Now you won't see that it's been hollowed, okay, because we've seen the outside of it. If you want to double check, Alt B, go inside, and you can see that it's been hollowed out like this, okay. If you go gyroid, you can also do gyroid and it will come out in a gyroid fashion. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we want to cut the die. So Control I and hide. Control I is always to select the inverse. I'm going to look at it from the top here. I'm going to put my vertex, my cursor again close to me, and we're going to go into the model designer, click vertex cutting, use the G key, the E key, like that. Shift D can take off a bit here. Shift D to save on material. Extrude, 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 like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create our slice. Wolfgang, can you explain the thickness of the slice here?
Yeah, so the burn layer will also extend mesially and distally. So if you keep the thickness of the slice thicker, then hopefully then you don't need to sand away the interproximal burn layer. So depending on how you want it.
Okay, let's say it's on some material over here. Same thing, like that. Extrude, extrude, extrude. And that's okay. Slice it.
I would
I'll
still put another one there,
0.2.
Michael.
Where?
So somewhere halfway. Have you got, yeah. So you don't have too much of a long piece. So
Okay,
break
yeah.
that up into more segments.
What's straight through the middle here?
Yeah.
Very easy to do. Perfect. Delete what we don't want. Okay, and this is what it then looks like here. Okay, so you may have seen a photo on the internet with it being hollowed out, which is absolutely fantastic. All right, we're going to go ahead and just do this crown. We're going to go crown. These are my working models, and these are my antagonists. Okay, we're going to hide the antagonist, and we're going to grab ourselves a tooth. Okay, so we're going to select the tooth. I think it's this one here. Delete the unwanted. Select this and put it in there. Okay, flip it around like that. R key and S key. So this is just a quick, you can see this tooth is far away from the contact. We don't want to do it like this, okay? It always has to be in visual proportion with the rest of the teeth. So even if there's no contact there, some dentists may not want a contact so a patient can clean nicely and keep it hygienic with floss. Or other dentists want to have it, to prevent it from moving. So, there's always two schools of thoughts there. All right, so it's a bit high, doesn't matter. We're going to go into the crown module and put it into the tooth collection. So that has then remeshed the structure. Now, I've been told that in this case, the dentist wants to overlap the buccal side for retention. So let's do that. So we're going to draw our margin. Now, this is a difficult case because we don't see the margins, and there's a lot of sharp areas and stuff. So, and then I think they wanted to come up like this. So that's all right. Over here, we don't actually see much of a margin at all. And then here they wanted to overlay it. Okay. There's no prep line, so it's not a tidy tooth preparation. Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to create our surface. Okay, create surface. Okay, so that's taken my post as well. And if you wanted to put contact, I'll just make another surface just to make sure that, just to demonstrate. So draw. Take that above. Now a good tip and trick is try and avoid big dimples and cuts and fosses and whatever. Try and go where it's nice and smooth, the tooth. Again, we're going at an angle here, just like the arch cutting tool, okay? Very important, because that all extrudes outwards. Now we're going to survey. So select this and select there. There's an error code built in. You can't survey if this is not called surface. Okay, so if you click on this one by mistake, it will not survey. So always, but if you do have one where you need to survey like an implant abutment, you would then select, and it's called abutment, then you would select the surface last. Okay, and then it will then survey. Okay, so let's go here, survey. Now, the post, this is a tricky survey. We can't survey it like this because we need to think about the post. It needs to insert into that hole. I'm going to adjust it so I can look down this hole, because you can imagine if we don't block out this wall, that wall here must be blocked out. If we don't block it out, that post is not going to fit into this cavity. So this is something that's very, very important. Hey, Wolfgang, this whole wall has to be blocked
It
out.
needs to be blocked out.
Unless you've got a separate post with a pin going through there.
So
But we're not going to cover that now.
okay,
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that.
Okay, this is a one-piece thing. So we're going to block this out. Excellent. Okay, you can see how that's been blocked out. Perfect. And then we're going to take this one, and that's going to be our contact. We're going to take this one and create a margin. So I'll put 0.1. Now, when we have inlays and, very tricky ones, just have a look and see how your support margin is running. In this case, it seems okay. When it goes on the inside, then you have to click on this one here, because it will then extend the margin towards the inside for inlays. Very important. Otherwise, it's going to cut into the model. Here, we're going to take that and we're going to create our spacer in our zone. Now again, this is the part where we would then make a post, a baptist, because we can then create a coping layer, and then we can put something inside of there to join up as a post. So I'll just save this. So if we've got time later, I will then come back to that. Okay. Excellent. We're going to look at the occlusal adjustment. So view this. In this case, we want to make sure that this is nice and free because it's a posterior tooth. We don't want heavy occlusion on there. I'm going to select that and make my cutter. Notice that there are these two pieces have been joined into one cutter. I'm going to set that at 300 microns because I want to make sure that it's out of bite. You can even do more than that. Okay, and then we're going to apply this offset, which becomes our cutter. This is we're going to go into live trimming mode using the G key again. And I'm going to just have a look at it from the side. Maybe we can rotate it a little bit, like this. We can bring it up a little bit more, something like that. I'm going to use it like that. Yeah, so that looks quite okay. This looks quite okay. Okay, we've got a cut here, and I'm going to leave it out of the bite for now. we're going to trim this restoration, and then we're going to then go into the generate of the crown. So edit, I'll pull this out a little bit, something to that effect, like that. Just pull it out like this a little bit. I think that should be okay. I'll just save it. It's a good to save it at this stage, because in the event that it doesn't generate, okay, usually it does generate, but in the event that it doesn't, then we can just change the mesh where the margin is, but it should be okay. So generate crown. So I'm just going to briefly show you where this locator is placed as well. Okay, that's looking good. Look at the mesh structure. It's looking very, very nice. A beautiful mesh structure. I'm going to hide. You see how this locator has been placed to select all of the objects, and especially up top here, this is important because this is where it chooses what mesh from the tooth library. Remember, it extends downwards. It will then pick this surface up top here. Okay, so yeah, I'll just hide that again. Hide the locator. Yeah. So this is my crown. You can see where the cut is. We can see where it's been chopped out here, the block out model. You can also see a little bit here. I'll just hide the pencil line. We don't need to see that. Here, over there, the block out has done its work, and also our die spacer has also done its work here. So we can see how nice that actually looks. Okay, perfect. So in the event that you do want to extend that into the contact, view your contacts, select that, make a contact cutter. Now, this needs to be, I think there's a minimum of 2 millimeters. If it's more than 2 millimeters, it's not going to select this cutter. Okay, so but 2 millimeters is actually quite far. So just shape this. Yep, and we're going to hide the actual segment. Now, I would probably, I don't know, maybe you guys can tell me whether you would close this or not. Wolfgang, we've done heaps of crowns that look like this.
Yeah.
Hey, oh, close it. We don't want the crown to move. Yeah, okay, well, everyone's got their own ideas, I think. Okay, we're going to cut this. I'm going to delete the cutter. No, actually, let's just smooth it here, just a little bit like that. Exit and delete the cutter, and I'll just smooth it a little bit more. Smooth with protection, like that. Okay, we don't even have to smooth around the margins anymore, which is absolutely fantastic. Yeah, like that. And exit. Okay, so that's our finished crown.